Welcome to Penny for Your Shots, conversations and cocktails with brilliant women. I'm your host, Penny Fitzgerald, and I believe the best stories are the ones shared over a glass of wine or a cocktail. Each week, I sit down with women who've said yes to building something meaningful, often after years of putting everyone else first. We talk business, big dreams, and the mess in between. And of course, a few favorite drinks. So grab a glass, get comfy, and let's pour ourselves into Penny for Your Shots.
Can we talk about busy for a second? Because somewhere along the way, we decided that being exhausted meant we were worthy, that overbooked meant successful, that overwhelmed meant ambitious, that exhausted was just part of being female, of being human even. And I'm just going to say it. That's a lie. Busy is often the safest way to avoid the scary stuff, the visibility, the leadership, the growth, the impact you want to have. I see it all the time inside serving superstars. Brilliant women, big hearts, big ideas, and calendars packed with things that technically matter but don't actually move the needle. In today's episode, I'm talking with Peggy Sullivan, former VP of Marketing Communications at Blue Cross Blue Shield, who had some serious wake-up calls around stress, burnout, and what she calls time poverty. And what I loved about this conversation is that she brought the data. Not just feelings, not just mindset, actual evidence that chronic busyness damages relationships, hurts performance, and literally impacts your health. Here's what really resonated with me. You don't need a crisis to change. You don't need to eat cat food by accident. Yes, that really happened to her. You don't need a stress-induced heart attack. You don't need your life to fall apart. You just need self-awareness and the courage to subtract. You don't need more time. You need fewer low-value yeses. If you've been telling yourself you're too busy to build the thing, too busy to show up consistently, too busy to step into your next level, I want you to listen closely. And I want you to book a free connection call with me. The link is in my show notes and on my Penny for Your Shots website. You know how to find me. For now, grab your favorite beverage and settle in. This one might feel like a loving nudge. Here is Peggy Sullivan.
Hi, Penny.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, back at ya. Back at ya. I am appreciating some of the old school photos you have behind you. I just recovered a photo album that used to belong to my dad that has a bunch of black and whites and old photos, and it's just so much fun.
Very fun. Yeah, my dad at 16 and some of the really, really old pictures. Yeah, I love seeing them close by too.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Peggy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I have been working in corporate America for a great period of time. And then I took a pause and wanted to see if there was more of a legacy for me and if I could do some more purpose-driven work. And so I started a nonprofit and I did a lot of research to understand what was going on with people and what their challenges were. And for 12 years, I did market research that told me the same challenge kept on rearing its ugly head, and it was that 95% of the population is over the top busy, wants to be less busy, but doesn't know how. So I have dedicated my last 10 years to perfecting a process that helps people turn what I call time poverty into time wealth so they have time for what's important.
That's so great. I agree so much too with that. I feel like, well, I work with a lot of female entrepreneurs, and what I hear over and over again is how busy they are. Like you've found the research to prove it. We all know how busy we are, but I feel like it's a tool for entrepreneurs, especially to keep ourselves small. If we're always busy in the day-to-day minutia, we can't make the big impact. We can't grow. We can't be seen. We aren't out there. So you know, by default, we stay small. Do you find that in
Yeah,
corporate
I
too?
mean, yeah, for me, it was this self-awareness. I did a lot of research
Mm-hmm.
and I really wanted to look at the data, and the data told me a lot of things. One of the things the data told me that for most entrepreneurs that our schedule is so overstuffed, we don't have time to do the important things. So I think that we need to be more self aware of the choices we're making and align our choices with what's important. And we live in a world where there's so many distractions and so many people pulling us at, and we need to take a moment and really start to make more intelligent decisions on how we spend our time. And when we start to change those basic habits, we find that we can make time for what's important. It's just a matter of being really self-aware. Do I want to spend my day multitasking? No, because when I multitask, it takes me twice as long and I make 50% more mistakes. Do I want to put my self-care on the back burner? No, because then you're in brain fog and then you're not doing your best work and you don't have your best energy. And it really gets back to the data and looking at the data and understanding busy is not better. Busy doesn't bring us stronger relationships. As a matter of fact, people that are busy end up damaging their relationships. They choose tasks over people and human connection. And it doesn't mean we're more productive and we're getting more done at work. That old fallacy is that busyness equals success. The data just doesn't align with that.
Mm-hmm. Peggy, what did you do in your corporate career? What was your background?
Yeah, I worked in healthcare and I was vice president of marketing communications for Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I did that for quite some time. And I, as a young girl, really did believe busy was better. And then I had a couple of wake up calls where it just became crystal clear to me this thing that I called living. I wasn't doing it so that I could enjoy and optimize my life. I wasn't doing the things that would help me achieve the things I wanted. I was actually just running on a treadmill and going through the motions. I was kind of burnt out, in a haze. I actually had a number of serious things that happened. The first was kind of funny. I ate cat food for dinner, thinking it was pistachio nuts one night when I came home exhausted. And within 6 months of that, my husband of 18 years asked for a divorce. He said that our relationship had been deteriorating. We weren't spending enough time together. And about 4 months after that, stressing over everything, I had a stress related heart attack. And so there
Oh,
I was. Everything that I worked so hard for had become out of reach. And for me, I am hoping that most people don't need to get into crisis situation to realize that busy isn't better.
wow. So I hear that so often too, that out of your own self, like an issue that comes up for you or a problem that you fix for yourself, it drives you to help other people to feel better, to do better, to ask a better question and to make their lives better.
Yeah, I mean, I have no doubt in my mind, time poverty is real. We all get to the end of our
Mhm.
day wondering where'd the day go and why didn't I get done what was really important. And so I think people have just been searching for a way off the hamster wheel. And that's what I've been working on. And the process that I have that I call performance by design, it eliminates low value activities. I call it subtraction. That's step one. And so you have more time for what's important. And then step two is igniting the superpowers of happiness. We tend to think that happiness is a destination, a place, but it's not. it's actually micro moments that we can create for ourselves, because when they're macro moments, it's out of reach. And so I wrote my first book about the neuroscience of happiness. And what I learned is that when we are happy, we have more focus, more
Mm.
energy, we're in a much better mood, we're more charismatic, we fight off chronic disease. It's like a superpower. So I encourage people to do tiny little happiness rituals throughout the day. They don't need to be long. I myself do things like have little dance parties, get my blood going. I eat dark chocolate, I smell it, I taste it, I take a pause. And it's like pushing the reset button and getting those endorphins going. And it's biological, and that's why step two in my performance by design is what I call mojo making, creating intentional acts of joy, happiness rituals. And then the third step in the process is really having a filter for your yes and your no decisions. You know, we live in a world right now where people are in what is called a purpose crisis, confusion
Mm.
over our why, and it's really affecting our younger generation. And consequently, you know, people aren't feeling satisfied. They're not feeling fulfilled. And my perspective is, you know, we all know our whys. They're simple, they change throughout life, but we know what our why is. I think the challenge that we all face is the how to. And that to me gets back to time management, may be an $18.5 billion industry, but we're in a purpose crisis. So time management is failing us. And I believe we need to get back to our values and make our decisions based on our values. And when we do, we don't end up robbing ourselves of what's important. We align our decisions and our time with what matters.
Interesting. Yeah, it feels very much like I was in corporate for a number of years as well. And the rat race, the hustle culture, the bro mentality, the competitiveness of it's a pie and we have to get, we have to prove ourselves. We have to get our piece of pie. But as women, I have been saying this for a minute, that we'll just make more pie. you know, we don't lead like that. We don't lead from that scarcity mindset. We're better with abundance. We create experiences, but we're also quick to say yes to everything when people need us. We're quick to say, sure, I'll do that thing for you. If it's for someone else, especially for our family, our kids, our husbands, our family, we do it without thinking often. But you're advocating for really taking a step back and understanding what's important and making
Yeah, I
decisions
mean,
based
I
on that,
make
right?
a decision by, you know, am I going to give value? Am I going to get value? Is it going to be something that I feel good about, or just something I get by and get through? And if I'm doing it because I believe I need to be doing it, and my motivation, it doesn't align with my belief system or my values, then, and today's a perfect example. I took an appointment with somebody that I probably shouldn't have. And I was looking at my schedule and realizing that it was a hectic schedule. And I just texted this person and said, look, today's not the day for us to get together. I will not be able to be present. I have, other things, and we'll have to reschedule. And I didn't hear back, but that was the decision I made for myself to make sure that I had what I needed to do what I needed to do today.
You have to protect yourself. You have to protect your energy.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about the data? I mean, give us some of those statistics you were mentioning about how important it is to protect yourself in that way.
Yeah, I'm 75% of people put self-care on the back burner because they believe they don't have time for it. And self-care, I'm not talking about taking a 4-week vacation or going to the gym for 2 hours. I'm talking about like keeping that dental appointment because you've canceled it 3 times, and taking
Mm.
15 minutes to get nourishment. during your day. And we already talked about the multitasking deal, and even just interruptions. We go through our day and something pulls away our focus, and we forget the fact that you give in to that little phone call, that little beep, that little something nugging at you, and you move away from what you're working on, and your mind needs to refocus, and it takes time to refocus. And so when we're constantly letting all these interruptions in, it actually takes us 25 minutes to get back to the primary task we want to focus on. So, all of the data shows that the way we're living right now is not conducive towards healthy, happy, productive, and that we need to simplify in terms of, yeah, it's as simple as doing one thing at a time and doing it well and feeling good about it and being self-aware of the things that you let in. I worked with a CEO of a bank, and he was telling me how email was his busy trap, and that the company got so big and they all got so used to writing emails. And so I asked him, I said, are all of the emails, do they add value? Are they telling you something you really need to know? And he said, no. He says, actually, the more I think about it, there's only a small percentage that fit into that category. So I'm like, so you're the CEO, change the email protocol, ask your team to just take a moment before they send it, because it's not just about you and your time. I mean, think about how you can relieve your staff of all these extraneous emails. Change the rules. You can change the rules. And so we did. And you know what happened? 45% of his email disappeared within 6 weeks. You know
I'm
what happened
sure.
after that? Corporate performance improved dramatically, bottom
Mm,
line metrics. And so, it's just not as complicated as we think everything is. Life is a lot simpler. Focus on what matters, eliminate what doesn't, eliminate these low value transactions, step into your happiness. You can have those wonderful hits of endorphin that really improve your focus, your brain power, your energy, just through small little things that you do for yourself. Go take 3 minutes and go pet your cat if that gives you joy. I know for me, when my cat starts purring, it makes me feel really good.
it is
You
an
know, I
energy
I
boost.
just yeah, it's getting back to the basics. We need to get back to the basics.
That's it sounds like that the culture, it trickles down, and it sounds like that really made a big difference for that company. But what do you do if you're in the middle somewhere and you can't make a big decision like that for the company? How do you navigate when your company culture doesn't fit what you
Yeah,
know to be true?
I think that's a great question, and I think we're all in situations where, we can't maybe change the situation, but there's always something you can do. And look at yourself and be self-aware. What low value activities am I doing? Do I get up in the morning and I first go to email? Do I end my day spending an hour doom scrolling? Like, what are the things you can control? And it does get down to the things that you can and can't control. I had a friend who I was coaching, and she said to me, I spend all my days in meetings, all my days. I have never time to do my work. And I'm like, well, what if you went to your manager and said, look, I'm sure that these meetings are intentional, but they're not really giving me value. I'm not learning anything new. Maybe we should meet less often, or maybe we shouldn't meet at all if there isn't a purpose or an outcome or a delivery, a next step. And so what ended up happening in her department was they cut back on meetings. And, we think that we don't have a choice, but sometimes it's just as simple as saying, I I want to see this company succeed. I'm spending all my time in meetings, which means I can't be doing XYZ. Can you help me figure out, how I should rectify this? And a lot of times good managers will up and say, well, you really don't need to be in that meeting, or, maybe we're meeting too often, or maybe that meeting should have an agenda. And if it doesn't have an agenda, it's not important enough, then, we shouldn't be meeting.
Hmm. I work with a lot of founders, women particularly, who have come out of a corporate setting specifically because of some of these things. They
Mhm.
want to make an impact in the world. They want to do something that, they want to follow their passion, but then they get stuck in this busyness and of doing all the things. And yes, it's a choice, but I feel like some of my people that I work with get not really addicted, but it's this you're used to. It's a habit of saying yes to all the things. It's a habit of doing all of these tasks that take us away from that purpose. How do you suggest that someone break out of that busyness habit?
Yeah, well, busyness is more than a habit. It's also an addiction. We
Hmm.
tend to think that addictions are things like drugs and alcohol. And my second husband is a recovering alcoholic, so I know how serious. I don't use that word lightly, but the American Psychiatric Association says an addiction is anything that distracts you, keeps you from normal behavior. And because we get an adrenaline hit when we get something done, even if it's something as small as I'm going to do something really low value just to cross it off my list because I'll feel good, I got something
Hmm.
done.
It feels good to
And,
cross it
but
off.
yeah, it does feel good. But if it's not important or meaningless or doesn't really contribute to the bottom line, you're better off spending a chunk of time and, taking a micro step on a macro project that is bottom line oriented and does. So for me, that's why I recommend this performance by design framework, because step two, the mojo making, actually helps you with that addiction. We get a dopamine high. So do happiness rituals, give yourself a moment or two. It only takes 90 seconds to ignite your endorphins and your brain, to stimulate your mood, your energy, your ability to focus. And if we spent a bunch of 90 seconds throughout our day kind of refocusing and pushing the reset button, we'd be able to do that. And that's why for me, pushing the reset button, scheduled happiness rituals are so crucial towards getting past this busyness as a habit.
It's really a retraining of your brain that you're safe in taking that new step, in stepping out of that busyness and towards your higher purpose, towards a greater impact for people. Just kind
Right.
of
I mean, it's truly about self-awareness. And you know, just I produce a report that's called the Workplace Busy Report, and it's got all sorts of statistics in it that really show how we fail at our relationships when we're over the top busy. Our bottom line metrics fall apart, our health, our happiness, our mental health. I mean, all of it deteriorates when we've got too much going on. And if you just look at the data and the analytics, approach it intelligently. The data says busy isn't better. Okay, we're smart. Busy isn't better. So I've got to, start to remove some low value activities. And I think that's why I ended up with subtraction as step one in the performance by design, because it you need to feel some relief. We're all just feeling like, oh my God, I want to take the top off the lid. And when you eliminate one or two low value transactions, you start to feel more in control, and then you feel better, and then you eliminate one or two more, and then you can start, figuring out, what are my values, and I'm gonna make yes or no decisions that align with my values. And if a prosperous career and making a difference is one of your core values, then it's a priority. Make it a priority, Then maybe cooking dinner every night and cleaning the house and doing laundry, maybe that's less of a priority. Maybe you get somebody to help with that. There are always trade-offs that we can make, but we aren't superwomen. We can't do it all. Nobody can do it all. You can do it all for a short period of time, but maintaining that juggling act, it just
Mhm.
never is sustainable.
That's so true. That's true. That stress, what it does to our bodies too. I just talked to another brilliant woman this morning about how it affects your body and how your body always knows. You can always feel something shift in your body, or if you can tell when something's not right, the way that your body reacts. Have you
Yeah.
encountered anything like that?
Oh, yeah, all the time. And I think that's when I get down to the basics and I ask myself, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling stress? And if it's something I can control, I work to control. If it's something totally out of my control, my job is just to deal with it. And so I'm a big fan of, is this in your control or out of your realm of control? Right now I've got a sister who's very sick and terminal, and that is out of my control. Her health is out of my control. What's in my control is that I can be the best sister ever and help her navigate through this really difficult situation. But I can stress out that I'm losing my sister, and that, my parents are gone. Now my sister's going to be gone. I can, kind of lean into that. Or I can basically say, look, this is happening. So I'm going to feel really good about the time I spend with my sister and how I support her and letting her know that I'm there for her whenever she needs me.
Hmm. It's so important to be present for the people in our lives. And you can't do that if you're too busy.
Exactly. I mean, there'll be so many times where my husband is into sports and he loves his hockey and he loves his football, and he's watching all these things, and I want to talk, and he'll be like, not now, and I'll be like, really? Like a game is more important than what I have to say? I don't think so. And I'll turn the TV off, and I'll stand in front of it. I'm like, no. And, human connection is really important. I loved when the Surgeon General a couple of years ago came out with the stat that we are going through a loneliness crisis. And he came out with that stat right during COVID, but the numbers didn't change. People kept their isolation
Mm.
patterns, and really what he said was that it deteriorates your health. It's almost like smoking 13 cigarettes a day. That's what it does to your
Wow.
heart, your lungs, your brain, your skin, your energy level. And that's medical science telling us that. So, we just need to be smarter. We have all the data around us, and we know how it feels to be over the top busy too. So it's really about taking control of your life back. And I always tell people it's about choosing meaning over mayhem. And if you
Mhm.
let me indulge, I'll tell you a little
Mhm.
story.
Yes, please.
When I was a little girl, I used to love riding my bike over to my grandparents' house. They lived about 7 miles away, and I would, during the summer, ride my bike over there. And then my grandfather would tell me all these stories of his life when he didn't live in America and all this stuff. And, I grew up with a man who was very value driven. And he told me why values became so important to him. And he always told me the story about when he was in Germany, and he was in his 40s, and my dad was 8 years old, and my grandmother Lena, they were all sitting down to dinner, and favorite meal, bratwurst and sauerkraut. Ugh. But anyways, it was their favorite meal, and my grandma had baked bread, and they were having a lovely time, and then the room filled with black uniforms, and it was the SS, and they took my grandfather to a concentration camp. And so, when he arrived, his priority was no more, protecting his family, making money, providing, his sole purpose was to survive. And so he kept on saying, what values do I need to survive? What is my how? How am I going to survive? And he decided human connection was a really important value of his. And when he looked around, he knew that there were hundreds of people who were fathers, who were sons, who were business people, who were in the same position as him. So he decided that he would kind of form a bond and really start connecting with these people because it would be helpful. And before he knew it, he had this support system that, when his mind was wandering and he was feeling horrible, he was able to connect with people and kind of get through it. And he also told me about, up until that period of time, how self-care was always something he put on the back burner. But, in this particular situation, it was cold, it was damp. He didn't have a warm coat to keep him warm. He didn't have boots to keep his feet dry. And, he did the unthinkable. He took a coat and boots off of a dead person for his own survival. And he told me how he wrestled with that. And that was just morally not right. And how he would wrestle with, they bring the food in a trough and he would be the first to run because rations were skimpy. And yet, if he didn't eat, he couldn't keep his energy up. And, at the end of the day, he did end up escaping and he led a beautiful life. And he leaned into his values as how I'm going to get to this, how my life is going to have meaning and purpose.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old were you when he told you those stories?
I was 8 years old too. So they were pretty impactful.
I bet.
Yeah, they were pretty impactful, and my dad always used to tell me stories too when I grew up a little bit more. He came to the States when he was 8.5 years old, couldn't speak English, had no clothes, had no place to stay. Everybody had to get jobs, and he talked about how he learned that he could do hard things and that he was resilient, and that once he said to himself, I got this. I can do hard things. I've done them before. Look at what my family just survived. He had this resiliency and the sense of confidence that helped him get through anything life had to throw him.
Wow. When you've been through something that big, what else can come to you? What else are you going to do but do your
Right, but here's
best?
the thing. We need to come to this self-awareness without a tragic wake-up call.
Mm.
We need to say, I can take a micro step, one micro step, nothing really big. I'm just gonna eliminate doom scrolling, or I'm gonna tell people that I'm only checking my email twice a day, and please know that it's 11 and 5, and if you have something urgent, pick up the phone. I mean, there are so many things that we can do to be resourceful, to turn this tides of too much to do and too little time. We just need to make a small step, one micro step.
Hmm. One of the things that I do to keep present, to stay present, is meditate. like on a regular basis, just 10 minutes a day, just in the morning, just to really refocus and to make sure that you're, listening. Because I feel like, well, I know that there are no questions that we have without a solution. There are no questions without the answer, but you just have to sit still long enough for them to come to you, for them to be verbalized, or to come to understand what you can do to make a difference, or to answer that question.
Yeah, I'm a picture person and I'm visually driven. So for me, I don't meditate, I draw or I think or I put words
Nice.
down and I'll ask myself questions and then I'll look at the words and then all of a sudden it'll come to me like, okay, well, why are you worried about that? That's kind of stupid. Why are you wasting your precious time and energy about that? That's out of your control. And for me, just visualizing the things and writing them down,
Mm-hmm.
really helps. And even my to-do list, I do a to-do list every single day. And I look at it the following day and I say, well, is there anything on there that just really doesn't matter? And it would be a nice to do, but not a have to do. And if it's not a have to and it's not important, take it off your list.
Mm,
Doesn't matter
interesting.
if it's a 5-10 minute activity, it'll probably
Mhm.
take you longer.
I use my to-do list. I have an app that I use to do it, and I put everything on there. I kind of use it like a brain dump so I don't forget things, so they don't fall through the crack. But that seems like it could lead to this gamification of, oh, I can check this thing off. Oh, I can check that thing off. Where's the balance, or how do you find that, for not letting things fall through the cracks, but then also, keeping your to-do list clean and being really those impactful tasks that we
Yeah,
have to do?
it's just all of this gets back to self-awareness and
Mm.
really, saying to yourself, I get back to that appointment that I took this afternoon with somebody I hardly knew that had little value to me, and I just took it because I thought it was the right thing to do, and he asked, and then I'm like, no, I don't need to be spending an hour of my time on this. This is not critical. This is not urgent. This is not important to me. And just saying no and being okay with saying no. I gave one of my best friends a call yesterday because I was really sad about my sister and she's very
Mm.
sick and I just had a moment and I need to speak to her. And I texted her, and she basically said, I'll try to call you tonight. And she didn't. And I woke up this morning saying, okay, well, I wasn't that important to her. I reached out to her, I needed her support. And, I think it's important that we're constantly evaluating the people and the things in our lives. And if they're not adding value and giving value, we need to speak up. So I'm going to call this friend and say, look, I really needed your support. I've been there for you. You kind of, I reached out to you. I told you I was in a really dark place, and yet you couldn't find 5 minutes to call me. That really was heartbreaking. And I need you to know how I'm feeling. And if it happens again, we're going to have to talk about our friendship because it just may not mean to you what it does to me. And I'm not into a one-sided relationship. And that's part of doing the hard things and eliminating the low value people, the low value tasks constantly. We're like books and chapters, and we go through different cycles. And just because something was working for you in chapter one, it made a whole bunch of sense, doesn't
Mm.
mean you need to be doing it in chapter three. Maybe circumstances have changed. So always having the courage to say, okay, I kind of need to pivot. And by the way, pivoting is probably the greatest skill any of us can have in today's world where everything is moving so fast, is being able to pivot on a dime. And that's why I get back to the self-awareness. You just need to be really self-aware in what you're focusing your energy on, and not spending time on things that, don't give you value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, learning and honing that resilience skill is very important. And it's so difficult, the situation you were discussing it, because I feel like some of us, it's not that we're pussyfooting around or anything, but we may not clearly state what we need in the moment. So, like, I can see reaching out to a girlfriend and saying, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you. I really need to talk and get something." We don't know what she was going through, or I wouldn't necessarily know what she would. Maybe she had a really bad day too and needed us, or maybe she didn't understand how badly I needed to talk. I mean, those are some
Hmm.
of the things that grace, there's kind of that line between, well, I've got to reevaluate, and also, well, maybe she had something going on too. I mean, how do you balance
Yeah, well, I
that?
think that's why human connection is so important, and not just letting it go, but talking about it and saying, "This is what I was feeling. What was going on with you?"
Mm,
And when you understand maybe their why, it will help you empathize, and maybe you'll end up in a different place. And I'm certainly open-minded to that,
mm-hmm,
but it hurt me, that I specifically reached out to her
mm.
and said, I really need you. I needed her, and she failed me. And there may be a great reason. And I may be like, okay, well, I understand that. I get that. Let's put this in the past. But you need to communicate.
Yeah, to be clear and not some of that's difficult. It's difficult to say some things, especially to friends, but you have to be clear. You have to be open and honest and just put your heart out there.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm.
Self awareness.
Yeah, I mean, it gets easier, I think, as we get older and wiser. But yeah, it's very difficult to navigate some of that. So, Peggy, you have been speaking on stages and helping people understand how busyness can be a trap, but how do you work with companies and individuals to break out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about them understanding the facts and the data. And that's why I'm so data driven. So I usually start with research about their industry within their company. I have a bunch of data tools that are very easy to implement. They don't take a lot of time, and I can come in and say, hey, this is what's going on in your company. These are the low value activities that your employees are experiencing. Why don't we take a stab of eliminating some? And, you're not getting the productivity or you're not getting the performance. Let's eliminate what is not important and make room for what is important. And it's usually when you start to figure out what's getting in the way and you eliminate it. And then how do you make sure that a corporate environment, has connection and that people are really supporting each other and hearing each other and helping each other towards the shared common goal? And when we're busy, we don't have time to connect. We don't have time to help our employees. And, I always think about that poor employee, the ripple effect busyness has, where you've got an employee, they've got a question, they can't figure something out, they want to ask the question, and the boss is too busy, right? They don't have the time and they don't understand the importance of it, and so they just keep on doing, or they make a second for it 5 days from now, but this employee is feeling this bottleneck right now, and that's why they raise their hand. And so I think we all need to make room in our lives for the unexpected, and just life in general. I block out an hour to 2 hours every single day for the unexpected. It always happens. Always,
Mhm.
always, always happens. And I'm glad I block out that time for that, because then I'm not sitting there thinking at 6, 7 o'clock when I'm exhausted, okay, now I have time to go back to what I truly sought to do today. We just need to be better better planners. And I think that's where, while time poverty is an huge industry and it's big business, there are parts of it that are working, but there are parts of it that aren't working. And that's where self-awareness comes in, where, you've got to look at your schedule and say, a human being isn't meant to have 40 hours of meetings a week. Like, how do you set yourself up for that and to get done what you need to get done? It just is not a situation that will turn out well.
Mm-hmm. How do you make, well, how do you foster those connections if the boss doesn't necessarily see that? How do you get someone in charge to kind of notice or just to say, look, this is happening for your people and it's causing a ripple effect in your company?
Yeah, usually that what is happening is also affecting bottom line metrics.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, many, right now the economy's tough and business is tough and people are hurting. And it's time where we rethink our status quo and what we're doing and behave differently, because the alternative is to stay in this place that we're at where business is not growing, business is static, and we're all struggling. So, there is no harm in to try something a little bit different once in a while and see how it works. If it doesn't work, then go back to what you were doing. But the reality is what we're doing isn't really working, because we're kind of in the world at a little bit of a standstill in terms of, all this chaos, and having the chaos turn into, beautiful, meaningful things. Right now it's just all a lot of chaos, and we're dealing with so many challenges that you need to take a second and say, well, what can I control and what can I do, to protect me and my time?
Mm-hmm. And out of those, like you were talking about earlier, that pivot, like we may need to pivot completely, if we're leading a team, or if we're in charge of a business or we're starting a business. What other things, how can I pivot? What resilience can I show, and what opportunities lie in this chaos? Is there something that I can
Yeah.
create?
Yeah. I mean, some people are capable of radical change. I think most people enjoy small changes at a time to kind of test their feet and see how it feels and see how it's working for them. And so I really am a big proponent that micro steps, climb a mountain, and one foot in front of the other, and do something. Don't do nothing. And you do that tiny little something, and then you start to see results. And then you're like, okay, well, I'll make more change. I'll try something different. And it begins to be this flywheel effect where you're getting momentum, things are going well.
Yes. That's what we all hope for, right? That momentum to shift.
Mhm.
Yeah. Speaking of shift, can I change gears on you?
Sure.
So at the end of every episode, I love to ask my guests, what's your favorite cocktail or glass of wine? Do you have a favorite?
Right now, I'm into Josh Merlot.
Oh, nice.
I had been purposefully not drinking for a long time. And I went back to an occasional glass of wine because I don't like black and white or yes or no. And I'm enjoying it. And Josh is the perfect Merlot. So,
Nice. It goes with so many foods.
yeah.
Very nice. What's a favorite memory with girlfriends?
I think the last birthday that I had, I live in Palm Beach and I traveled back to New York to do a couple of speeches, and I was able to get together with some longtime girlfriends. We just went out to dinner and we drank and we ate and we laughed and we joked, and it was an amazing memory.
Yeah. Getting back to when girlfriends gather, magic happens. It's great to
Agreed.
relive. Yes, great to
Agreed.
relive.
And those are also the first things to go. We were too
Yeah.
busy, so we cut them out. But really, they're exactly what we need to gather our energy and get a different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting back to that stress level and how it affects our bodies. I heard recently too that getting together with your girlfriends is the equivalent of quitting smoking for your health.
I believe that. I belong to a lot of girl groups, and I used to run a nonprofit. And women empower other women. We help each other. We show each other the way, and we give each other strength. It's important.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the way we speak to ourselves can be so harsh. And we would never speak to a girlfriend in that way. We see the best in our girlfriends, and it's important to see that in ourselves as well.
Absolutely.
Peggy, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would love to share?
No, if people want to learn more about me, my website is pretty vibrant. I probably got a couple hundred blogs that are there for the taking. I also have a tool that I call the Busy Barometer, which helps you identify your low value activities and gives you suggestions on how to eliminate them. So there's a lot of stuff on my website that could potentially really help people move away from time poverty and into time wealth. And time wealth is the place to be. It's where life is humming and life feels good. So I encourage anybody who's not sure what their next step is, go take a peek at my website and read a blog or take the Busy Barometer. All of it is just there to support people just like you. Doesn't cost anything. And so, yeah, so my website is peggysullivanspeaker.com.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'll include that link in my show notes too, so people can find you
Great.
easily. And yeah, I'm grateful for this visit. This has been wonderful, Peggy.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. That's a wrap on this episode of Penny for Your Shots. If you loved today's conversation, don't let the inspiration stop here. Get my weekly insider updates straight to your inbox. It's where I spill behind the scenes goodies, exclusive tips, and all the fun stuff I don't always share on the podcast. Sign up now at pennyforyourshots.com/insider. I'll see you in your inbox next Thirsty Thursday. Cheers.